Hey everybody, welcome to the RFP Success Show. I am your host, Lisa Rehurick, the #1 sought after authority on RFP success. And as you know, each week we bring you information, strategies, or resources to help you win more business through RFPs and hopefully have a little bit of fun doing it. So let's get this week's episode started. I'm excited to welcome Katina Koller. She's a licensed EOS implementer, Vistage chair, and executive coach with the Foundry community. So welcome, Katina. I have been practicing not calling you Katrina. I'm sure that happens a million times. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lisa. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I also answer to Katrina because it happens all the time.
I would imagine. I like that you have a sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we just get started with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Happy to share with you. I would describe my history in business as a series of successful failures forward. I think I learned a great deal over my career path and find myself in a position today to really serve others and empower purpose, help them to get wherever it is they want to be and achieve whatever it is that they want to strive for.
I love it. And my listeners have heard me over and over and over talk about the importance of that visionary and importance of that strategy. And I just want to toss this out before we really get into the deep questioning, is that I've actually just hired Katina and her partner Gina, who was on a prior podcast with us. That's how important I know that it is, that even though I even understand strategy and I can set probably the strategy for my own business, that's not the best thing to do, right? It's not really good for us to do that for ourselves. It's great to get that outside perspective, which is why I'm hiring you guys. Tell me a little bit about that outside perspective and your viewpoint on how important it is to get the outside objective perspective to help when we're planning.
Thank you, Lisa. And it'll be a privilege to serve you, really taking your game to the next level. I think the independent, outside, objective, third party crystallizes where you want your organization to go from the broadest perspective possible, really looking at the lens from a variety of perspectives, including the outside looking in, the competitive landscape, where you want to grow personally, where you want to grow professionally, what that top line and that bottom line really needs to look like for you. And I think we can do that work on our own. However, it is incredibly helpful to utilize a framework that's been proven and methodologies that have really demonstrated that it helps people to take their business and their life to the next level. And so that's what we bring, a history of field-proven methodologies and our experience to help people like yourselves just take it to the next level.
And you know what's really cool about that? One of my favorite quotes is a quote by Les Brown, and he says, "You can't see the picture when you're inside the frame."
Mm.
And I think too, the beauty of having an outside team come in and help is that, first of all, I expect, and I think I told Gina this, I expect you guys to ask me the tough questions, right? Ask me things that maybe I would avoid on my own, and also push us outside of our comfort zones and outside of our regular way of thinking, because we tend to get stuck in that tunnel vision, right? Of like, this is the way that it is, this is the way that I'm going, versus being able to see something that you guys might see completely differently than I have in my game plan. And it might be time for us to think a little bit differently about that. Do you see that as well? Quite a bit?
Our goal is to help you elevate your thinking to a board advisory type of position, looking really down on your business and down on your life from a 10,000 and even 30,000 foot view. Similarly, there's a quote by a mathematician philosopher that EOS really subscribes to, which is from Kurt Gödel. He says, "You can't see the system and be part of the system at the same time."
Oh.
So, just like your quote is this, our goal is to get you outside of the box so you can see inside it, and then we can really look at those levers and toggles and determine what we need to go after and how to get it done.
That's so exciting. Well, I'm very excited, but this, of course, is not about me. So the reason that I wanted to bring that up is I really wanted to let our listeners know, hey, all of us as business owners need to think about this stuff. And as we are talking about RFPs, you can bid on all the RFPs that you want, but if you don't have that trail of strategy to really think about the big picture in business and business development, and then even think about strategy and vision with each individual bid that people are bidding on, it's gonna kind of go awry. So that's the tie back to the RFP piece of it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here as we get into it. But I wanna ask you this question because you just mentioned EOS. Um, what is EOS? Tell me more about that.
Sure, happy to. And so let me give a little bit of backstory. So the Foundry community that Gina and I have envisioned, it helps business owners, leaders build their businesses, grow their businesses, and exit their businesses in those terms. Each one are a little bit different, from a strategy to an operations to a best exit perspective. And so our emphasis in regard to EOS is to create clarity, one vision, build one unified and aligned team, and have them tackle one concise plan that really drives to fueling their economic engine. And without the vision, without traction, strategy, you can't obtain those respective objectives. So it really ties into how you work with your clients relative to stating goals for RFPs, and we can talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you say exit, because I know a lot of the people listening are, they're business owners. They might not be thinking about exit in their business, but there's always an exit, right? I mean, whether it's selling it, or whether it's walking away, or passing it down to somebody else, or even unpredicted exits from our business. It
Right.
is important as business owners for us to be thinking about that, right? No matter what we want.
Absolutely, and Gina will speak to this too. The most likely cause of a business sale is an unexpected health event or an unsolicited offer. So each of us should be building our businesses for a sale, whether that's 5 months from now or 30 years from now. But the value builder, which Gina really touches on, is about creating that quality of earnings. That's what businesses are buying, and that's why RFPs are so important, because you are creating a future cash flow, and that is what your buyer is actually investing in. So anybody who has a series of RFPs that they've won historically and has a really solid outlook is going to naturally increase the value of their business.
Love that point. And I would guess that the value, if you've got a 5% win rate, that's not looking very good to the buyers. But if you've got like a 40% win rate, now we start getting into more validity around your ability to develop that business and get what you need to sustain the company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They are buying those future cash flows, those future quality of earnings speak to the value of your respective business, and the better positioned you are to show them the health of the future, the more likely they will play a higher multiple on an EBITDA.
Ooh, good conversation. I love that, because again, I think so many companies don't really think about the end result, because we get pretty wrapped up in our day-to-day, holy cow, we've got a lot on our plates. We got to just keep all the plates juggling in the air without dropping them. And a lot of people fail to think about what that might look like. And like you said, whether it's 5 months or 30 years, important piece. So in your company, you talk a lot about the interdependencies between responsibility, authority, transparency, and accountability. That's a lot of ilities. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Absolutely, happy to. And I think it'll give a little bit of context when I mention that both EOS and Vistage, the ethos for those are to get you working on your business as compared to working in your business. And so if you think of the life of a business owner, our goal is always to create a level of responsibility, ensure that we're able to delegate, have people take the appropriate levels of authority, then achieve the accountability that we're seeking. That all being said, that's a wish list if you have anonymity in your organization, meaning that if there isn't clarity around everybody's respective goals and they're not highly visible and they're not transparent to the whole organization, then you can't get to accountability. So you may want results, but you have to back into that. And that starts with complete transparency. And so, one of my client companies could say, sure, our goal is to increase our revenue by X through RFPs. But if you don't clearly have it tied to a strategy, tactical plan, a company goal, or an individual goal assigned to one person whose responsibility is to submit those RFPs, or even maybe you are measuring them on conversion rates, or maybe you're measuring them on the dollar value of them. If you don't have that highly visible, the likelihood that they will achieve those is less than common. It's highly unlikely that you won't have that without the accountability. And that's why it's so important to set forth the company goals and the individual goals across the organization. Everybody can seize it. This is our highest priority. We all align to this. And this is what success looks like at the end of the quarter or the end of the year.
And that's a really great point too, because, there's going to be two types of people listening to this podcast, right? The business owners who tend to have control over that vision, but also have to figure out the implementation. And then you've got people that are simply proposal writers. And I don't mean that simply in the term simply, because it's not a simple job and it's a very important job, but their job is proposal writing, and they might work for a larger company. But that even tells me that it's super important for them even to really understand the alignment of the big vision and the strategy that the company has to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And if they don't have that, what happens?
Simply what happens is you don't achieve it. You're very low likelihood to achieve goals if you don't have what EOS would describe as the bought in by all. So we start a vision building day 1 and 2 by answering 8 questions that are surrounding core values, 10-year target, niche, passion, purpose. And the leadership team builds those and everybody buys into it. And then there's a company-wide experience that you share stories with the team around why those are so important and how they're reinforced through success stories. So everybody in the value chain, as I like to call the team,
That's cool,
is subscribing to the RFP as the most important win for this year versus somebody who would have historically said, I will get to that when I don't have other things to do. And that's when we make it the low priority, it won't get done. When we make it the highest priority, we know that it will get done.
Yeah. And what's so cool about that, or interesting, I guess, maybe more than cool, is that the people that are responding to the RFPs tend to be all in on the RFP. Now, from a larger company perspective, right? And then the higher ups somehow think that the magical elves come in the middle of the night and sprinkle their fairy dust, and the RFP response gets done, and they don't take it seriously. And I find that especially in the larger companies, there's a huge disconnect between what the kind of executive sponsors, as I would call them, or the leadership team, and then the boots on the ground people that are having to make that happen. And so that kind of visionary to implementer, there tends to be a big gap. Do you see that too in some of the larger companies that you work with, or any of the companies you work with?
I tend not to, because it's the group of people who are in the room that are setting either the goals for the year for the company or the rocks for the company or individuals for the quarter. They will state that's the highest priority. And so we're constantly whittling down the initiatives in the organization to its highest priority. And it will naturally, an RFP would become that high priority, because that's, again, revenue gain. And that's what everybody is striving for. I mean, business is pretty simple. Reduce expenses, manage cash flow, and increase revenue. And so an RFP win is an increase in revenue. And once you have everybody aligned to that, from that visionary strategy, tactical plan, we all know that the RFP has to be won. And so there isn't a disconnect in that value chain. There's pure alignment.
And the alignment is so important because, RFPs can be really a big pain in the ass. I'll just state it simply, right? And they can be very arduous, and people are like, oh my God, we've got another RFP. And especially the smaller businesses they're doing 80 million things. They're wearing 80 million different hats. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that revenue, and I talk about this a lot, hey, that's your sales. That is so important, because if you don't have that revenue, guess what happens? People get laid off, people get stressed, all sorts of bad things happen. And that those RFPs are such a crucial linchpin in your business that we need to get more excited about them and more jazzed up. And for all those small business owners out there listening to this, make sure that you're thinking about everything that Katina's talking about, and all those, the strategy and the visionary piece of it, and mapping out those core values and all of the pieces of the puzzle. And then, oh, by the way, communicating that down to every level of the organization. But it's up to them as the leaders of the company to rally the troops, right?
Absolutely. And then maintain the alignment and unity. Good leadership is like good parenting.
Ooh.
The team is aligned. There's few roles and responsibilities, but they're clearly understood, and the parameters are really healthy for robust, open, honest, candid dialogue. Some might call it radical candor, other might call it fierce conversations, depending on which books you subscribe to. The latter, Susan Scott, all great books. Crucial Conversations is another one, but there has to be, within every organization, to get from trust to results, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, be transparent, and build that team.
That vulnerability and transparency seems to be a trend, right? Much more of a trend than, I don't know, 10 years ago when I was in corporate America. Those were not buzzwords. Those were not important. Do you find that that's been a bigger trend that's come into play, or have you always seen vulnerability and transparency as important?
I got educated in it. I had the opportunity to read the works of Patrick Lencioni, if I pronounced his name correctly, and he has this wonderful pyramid in the 5 dysfunctions of the team. And he says you can't, in the absence of trust, you won't have conflict, and you'll have fear of commitment, you'll have fear of accountability, and then you can achieve results. And so he clearly defined for us what I think is this ladder of emotional intelligence that we need as business owners and leaders to subscribe to actually get through those layers of the pyramid from trust to results. So it might be new for many, which is great, but at any time, the best time to plant that tree is 20 years ago or today, right? That great proverb, which is, if it hasn't been part of your leadership value set, then it could be now. And what's the worst that could happen? You'll build trust.
Right. Yeah, that's the worst that could happen, right? I love it.
Yeah.
You're quoting some really great books, and we'll make sure we have those books in the show notes, because I have read all or part of all of those books that you've just talked about, and they're phenomenal for business leaders. And I want to make sure that especially our business owners are paying attention to that. So why do you think businesses shy away from, this is what I find that a lot of businesses shy away from the visionary piece, or not necessarily the visionary piece. They'll have the big vision and the ideas, but really kind of taking that and then putting it really into a strategic plan of action and then implementation. Why do you think a lot of companies shy away from doing that?
I have a great quote from a professor somewhere on one of those Ivy League schools. I think she leads innovation. Her name is Ruth Gunther McGrath, and she says that generating ideas is not a problem. Incubation is, acceleration is.
Ooh.
So from a visionary standpoint, we have these incredible ideas, but to operationalize them, it takes back to the alignment and the team focus on the highest priorities. And that tends to be where things fall apart. People focus on the bright, shiny objects, they get distracted. Oftentimes, we have cultures that reward team members for firefighting, and we go through this renorming process where they're actually getting rewarded for being proactive. And it reduces or eliminates the firefighting, but that's a significant culture shift that you have to take. And there's some change management that has to occur in order to get to that place. And so it does take time, but like anything, it becomes a habit when you focus on it. I think Covey will tell us it's like, I don't know, dozens of repetitions to get to a habit. So discipline, rigor, traction, it evolves over time. It's not an overnight success. Nobody is. It's a 20-year overnight success.
It is a 20, yes, exactly. So, kind of along those same lines, but shifting gears is, the premise that, especially again, back to the small business owners, who are trying to wear multiple hats. They've got maybe 1.5 team members that are going to help them with an RFP. They've got, nobody really has RFPs as their full-time job. To those people, how do you suggest keeping them motivated to add in that extra layer of responsibility that, like, oh, you've got this full-time job over here, but oh, by the way, we've got a proposal in, now you've got to bid on that. So these are companies generally that they don't have enough to hire a full-time person, but obviously this is still revenue. This is still sales. It's very important. So again, the question being, how do you suggest keeping them motivated, those employees motivated to add in that extra layer of responsibility?
Great question, and it's a multifaceted response. So I'll give you a quote I actually saw from another EOS implementer in the Phoenix area, and he said, "The road of life is paved by squirrels who couldn't make decisions." So
I love that. I love all your quotes.
So I would say that the first step is, as the leadership team, even if you have 1.5 people or you have 5 people or if you have 50 people, the decision is that you're going to pursue RFPs. Then the next step is the discipline to act on it. And then it comes to the next D, which is distraction. We got to stop the distractions and the dilution of people's respective efforts. If everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So I think if we come to agreement, as with anybody in the organization, that this is the highest priority deliverable, then we will achieve it. It's when we start shifting things on the plate and moving things around artificially for people that we make it harder for them to be successful.
Oh, there's so many little golden nuggets in what you just said in that very simple kind of 2-sentence answer, because it really does go back to that starting at the leadership level. And you're right, it doesn't matter what size the organization is or how big the team is. If the leadership isn't making it a priority, nobody else is going to either.
Yeah, so goes the leadership team, so goes the company. I mean, that's how it works, hand in hand. And so I think we do the best service to our team and our resources when we model by example and when we lead by example, and we don't change horses mid-race and we don't change jockeys. We just stay focused on what's most important, because we said last quarter that this was the most important goal. Now, there's always gray areas where things shift and conditions change and markets change, things of that nature, but it's a fluid enough process that we can flex and adjust as needed, but we don't do it haphazardly as we would have in the past.
Yeah, and that's an important point too, because it's really easy for all of us to listen to what you're saying and be like, well, duh, yeah, of course it starts with leadership and this is just all obvious stuff. It is, but are we all doing it? Hell no. A lot of us are not, depending on where we're at. And it's just because life gets busy, and it is that purposeful presence that you have to have in order to really make that happen, which is one of the reasons why, I've engaged you and Gina to help me see that in a different way than I can't see it myself always, kind of help keep on track. So I love it. So you yourself have been a CEO and a business owner, and obviously very well spoken, and you know your stuff. So what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned, or a story that you can tell about a lesson that you've learned?
Oh, so many. Thank you for asking that. I really like this question and I like the reflection. As I said earlier on, my career was a series of failing forward. And I say that with importance because I don't think there's ever an overnight success. I think we surround ourselves by people at the table who are smarter than us and to
Yep.
help us learn and have brilliant advisors that aid us in this journey. So I would say one of the most impactful things for me from a leadership perspective when I onboarded with my former company was I read a series of books that really reflected the company's core values and its ethos behind growth. And one of those was the book by Bo Burlingame, which was called Small Giants.
Oh yeah. Great
Right.
book.
And I forget the byline. And if anybody reviews my quotes, yes, Google will tell them more accurately than me because I tend to mess them up a little bit. But it's about companies who place importance on being great, not ginormous, not gigantic. It's more about being great. And that had its significant amount of impact. And I think it's relevant in today's world where we're really enamored by some of the Silicon Valley unicorns and their blitz scale growth. And ultimately, this country is run by millions and millions of dreamers and visionaries and integrators and team members who do their part on a daily basis to make great companies. And they never have this aspiration to be a giant company. They just want to be a great company working with great people. And for me, that was one of my biggest desires, just to have had surrounded myself with really amazing people who shaped my entire life and outlook. And I really feel privileged to have been on that journey with them.
I have not ever heard that before. I've read part of that book. I'm going to go back to it because it's been a while, and I really like that outlook as well. That, even as I am building my business, I think about that as well, right? Like, I'm not thinking about building a ginormous company. I'm thinking about building a solid, good company. I mean, yes, we all have aspirations, but yeah, that's so interesting. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
One more kind of question around advice or a story, but what is one of the biggest mistakes that you see business owners making that prevents them from growing their business?
Oh, I think this is two-part, and I think we can all be guilty of this because we're ambitious people. Business owners, leaders are high achievers, and we're very driven. So that typically means that we take on more than we can actually complete.
No.
No, never happens. And then the other part of it is that we can get distracted by other opportunities. And so I think for all of us, it is being realistic about what's attainable in a year's time, in a quarter over quarter time, and then slating that plan and sticking to that plan. And then that reduces our tendency for distraction and our likelihood of pursuing the bright, shiny objects, the squirrels that cross our paths that really take us from our main deliverable. And so I would say be realistic, myself included, about what we can achieve. And then secondly, avoid the distractions. Business leadership ownership is really a mental discipline game where we set our highest priority and we deliver on it all day long, every day, and we reduce as many distractions as we possibly can. There's a couple of great books on that too. There's The One Thing, there's the...
Oh, that's a good book. Yep.
Yeah, I can't even think of it right now, the disciplined pursuit of less, essentialism and the disciplined pursuit of less, which is a fantastic one as well. So both worthy of reading, especially as we look at the holiday season and the year ahead of us, and say,
Yeah.
if we reduced our focus to maybe these 3 to 5 crucial, impactful goals, what can we achieve in that versus here are the 15 or 20 things that we're going to chase and maybe accomplish very low percentage to none of them. And so that's why I really like that essentialism, that disciplined pursuit of less, I think will get us farther.
That's great. Great advice. I have not heard of that last book, so I'm going to check that out for sure. So great advice. Thank you. Katina, this has been so fantastic. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So we have a website launching. It's www.buildgrowexit.com.
Nice.
And then you can also reach me at katina.koller@outlook.com, and look forward to you being part of the Foundry community. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you. This has been great. And all of her contact info will be in the show notes, everybody. So, of course, you can grab that there. Thank you again for being here, Katina. It's been my pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks to talk all about me. I love talking all about me.
Lisa, we're looking forward to it, that jumpstart experience with you and launching you to the next level. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Have a wonderful day. And everybody, you have been listening to the RFP Success Show podcast. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so that you do not miss a beat. We meet every week, so we've got a show every week for you. And of course, we always appreciate reviews as well. So thanks for spending time with us today. See you next week, everybody.